Tom, I'm reading, or just did read your column that's going to appear in tomorrow's Gazette. It's online right now. You're taking Francois Legault to task for trying to deal with unions because he has a major job ahead of him here, and basically calling him out on this and saying that, what's he trying to sell, a pig in a poke?
Yeah, it's a very old strategy. You're trying to define your adversary, but if you're considering the unions to be your adversary in 2023, you're really on the wrong path. And he's showing that he was trained in this stuff in another era. They're your social partners, and you've got to get it right. So what he tried to do over the weekend was to paint a bad picture of the union movement, saying that they were not flexible enough, that they weren't playing along. He decided that instead of going to the bargaining table, which is the only thing that is provided for under the law, he was going to create forums where they could come and discuss things. Every single union in the province of Quebec said, no, you can take your forums and stuff them. We want to sit at a bargaining table. There will be a central bargaining table. All the stuff that you want to do as a yak fest where other people could be involved and you get to spin your own story. No, we're not going to play that game. And it is a game. It's being played by people who provide advice, Aaron and Natasha, on communications. Mr. Legault's government has spent tens of millions of dollars on these spin meisters, these people who spin a good story, tell you what to do. So it was no accident that he sent this out over the weekend. It was the last weekend before the spring break for a lot of the Quebec schools. A lot of people would be reading it. Legault's very good on social media, but you knew it was the type of thing that was written by a committee. And at some point, he's going to have to get real and understand there are 600,000 people in this negotiation. Our teachers and our nurses are the lowest paid in Canada. Our cops and our Crown prosecutors are paid way below their Ontario counterparts. And at some point, all the rest is just talk. You've got to come up with the money because otherwise you're not going to be able to attract and retain people in these jobs where we're sorely lacking in personnel.
Okay, you also called out Sonia LaBelle, who up until this time, I know you've respected, the way she operates.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Why is she being called out here?
Because she played the game. She went on the radio. She went on a radio show yesterday on the French side, and she said, this is exactly the same thing as a central bargaining table. No, it's not. And, last night's interview that she gave, she said, it's like trying to, clean out a lake with a spoon, and I want to bring in a side loader into the lake. Well, it's almost an irony that, of course, it's totally illegal under Quebec's environmental laws to bring a side loader into a lake. I'll tell you that, Madam Minister. But at the same time, she's depreciating the value of her own ministry, her own role as head of the Treasury Board. She's utterly amazing at her job. She's one of the best people in that government. But by playing along with Legault's game, I think she's taking a lot of credibility away from herself.
I just don't understand the end game here. These deals need to be struck. What purpose does it serve to kind of come in with a bullying, that's the way he's coming at it, it seems to me. Like I think
that it has to do with the business types that he's surrounded himself with.
Okay.
This is a very old approach. I think that Christian Dubé is a tremendous health minister. I just think the guy's got great skills, and part of it is because he's been a senior manager in the private sector. But at the same time, I remember just, a few months back when it came time to deciding bonuses and new attributions for nurses in particular, he would say, well, I'm just going to give more money and I'm going to give more money for overtime. And the unions weren't saying no, but they were saying there are tons of details here that you clearly don't master. We have to sit down and bang this out because you're going to be skipping over a bunch of people who should be included here and including maybe some people who shouldn't. Well, instead of doing that, they pushed ahead, and you know what? The unions were right. And the unions weren't trying to block things. They wanted it to work. But the government was saying, no, we decide this, and they were trying to push aside the unions. It's the same game that's being played here. No, I want to have forums. I don't need this bargaining table stuff. We'll do that after I've told you in a forum, this sort of convention type setting, what we're going to be doing. Well, sorry, that's not the way it works. It's not what the law says, and get with the program. Otherwise, you're going to wind up with the worst result since 1982-83 when René Lévesque of the Parti québécois, then the Premier, wound up with a massive, rather violent strike, thank you, because they were trying to cut 20% of the salaries of a lot of the people in the government.
You're aware, Francois Legault is aware of that history, right? No one, it's a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. And in a province where there's so many votes, what are you saying, there are over 600,000 workers in this province in unions?
Yeah, there's a heck of a lot more than that in unions, but the current public sector union negotiation covers 600,000 people.
You'd think those are a lot of votes he'd be losing if he's playing hardball here. I realize it's only a year into the mandate, but I do like what you said. which is in your piece that he was spoiled during the pandemic. Right?
Yeah.
Too easy.
Sure, he would just show up for a press conference, take a couple of softball questions, and go home. The journalists weren't in the business of beating people up during the pandemic. They knew that it was an important time, and they were just providing the information that the government gave to them, and they were just relaying it. There wasn't. Now, welcome to democracy. Welcome to a very active press gallery, asking tough questions. And I do a lot of media on the French side. And I have to tell you, some of the people that I've known for a long time who are very much economic right-wingers, they're equally upset with Legault, saying, this is ridiculous. He's cruising for a bruising. He's going to get his comeuppance here, and this is going to be the first big failure that he's faced. Because he's trying to say there's no money, and at the same time he has promised that he will give tax reductions in the next budget. Now, who's going to be against a tax reduction? But when you look at the fact that the rest of the argument is, I'm sorry, we have to continue paying our nurses and our school teachers a miserable salary, but we've got enough money to give tax breaks, it doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was just thinking, first of all, just get the job done. Stop wasting time and energy. Pay these nurses and teachers what they deserve.
Exactly.
We are in a crisis.
Yeah, and you're not retaining them. And they keep saying, well, we're not training enough, but they shut down the Dawson College expansion that was there to train more nurses. They allowed the corporate entity that is the Order of Nurses to flunk a massive number of nurses in the last exam, and it's still being examined by the commissioner who's in charge of that. But I didn't hear a peep from either Sonia Lebel or Christian Dubé over that whole kerfuffle, and we're going to wait for the second part of the report that should come within a week or two.
All right, let me go back to Bob Fife. We replayed that interview today earlier in the show.
Yeah. I heard it when I was stuck in the tunnel under the airport for an hour and a half on the 13th this afternoon.
There you go. At least it wasn't overnight. So CSIST has uncovered, so this is an update to the original story, these plans to donate to something called the Pierre-Elliott Trudeau Foundation. So can you explain what this is?
Yeah, well, the Pierre-Elliott Trudeau Foundation was a very worthwhile institution set up to provide scholarships to top students across Canada. It's been doing just that for years. Wealthy people have contributed lots and lots of money to this thing, but it turns out that several people who were close to the Chinese government also thought that this might be a way, perhaps, to curry favor and to get on the good side of Trudeau, because they made the link between his dad and that foundation and Trudeau. But of course, it's all coming out now in a not very flattering way for Mr. Trudeau himself.
Does Justin have to stand up to this? I'm only asking the question because I heard people think this was a direct donation from the Chinese to somehow get to Justin Trudeau, which clearly it's not.
It's a stretch to make that statement, and you can only get there by attributing motives, which is something I try to avoid when I look at something. But it simply puts a circle around the stain of all of the things that Trudeau is refusing to look at objectively with regard to the government of China's behavior in Canada. So going back, we know now, because it's been revealed, that CSIS documents clearly pointed out to the government that we had a problem with Chinese government interference in our electoral process, the backbone of our democracy. Mr. Trudeau should be running to the microphones and running in front of the cameras to say, this is an outrage. I want a full commission of inquiry. But instead, he's hiding. What did Bob Fife say when you asked him that question directly? I've never heard him answer it so clearly, Aaron. He said, the reason that Trudeau's trying to stall this thing because it's going to turn out that the Liberals benefited from that Chinese government interference. That's, according to Bob Fife, the key author of all of this, that's the real reason that he's digging in his heels and he doesn't want the inquiry.
But even that doesn't make sense to me, because it's not like they were involved in the interference. Even if they benefited from it, it was still an outside force, doing this. So I don't understand why not just say yes to the inquiry?
Well, I'll give you another reason why he should say yes to the inquiry, because he's going to have to say yes to the inquiry.
Yeah,
with regard to your question, I think that it's a little bit like the discussion we just had around the foundation. It's an accumulation of things that tend to paint a really, funny picture of Trudeau's behavior on this. Do you think it's an accident that, like yesterday, out of the blue, we're banning TikTok? This is something, this is the Chinese government. Oh, who knew? Well, obviously, this has been around for a while, that TikTok might be very closely related to the Chinese government. But out of the blue, this became a huge distraction, and we'll talk about that for 24 hours.
Right.
But let's talk about the fact that the Chinese government has apparently been trying to interfere in Canadian elections, and let's deal with it. Let's get a panel, a tribunal of the best people that you can find. Put in somebody with NDP connections. Put in somebody with Conservative connections. Put in somebody with Liberal connections. Let them hear all of this. A lot of it's going to be done behind closed doors anyway, because a lot of this information can't be made public directly. But let them find out and make a full report to the Canadian voting public, because they deserve nothing less.
What's it going to take to turn those screws, Tom, to make them do that, do you think?
Well, once we get past the 24-hour TikTok thing, we're going to be right back to square one. They're out of Parliament this week and next, but there'll still be a few committees and such. You can be sure that the Globe and Mail is going to continue doing its great job, and we'll see, how much more information is able to come forward. So far, this has been a real catastrophe. Since January 1st, the 2 months that we've just gone through for the Liberal government have been excruciating. And I think that Trudeau's going to have to start scratching his head and saying, okay, I better make some serious changes around me, because every time they roll out one of the people who's absolutely underperformed, whether it's the public security minister or the transport minister, or, how come, we talked about passports. Apparently that's starting to get a bit better. But, if you are unfortunately one of the people who loses their job during this downturn in the economy, you won't be able to get your employment insurance because they're not issuing checks, because the whole thing's broken down also. So this is the type of government that we're looking at, and at the same time we're finding out there's some unseemly stuff that Trudeau's trying to hide. So he can't use that tone that he loves to affect and, just talk softly and try to explain to people that, maybe they're a bit slow and they don't understand as much as he does. Canadians understand full well there's something that went on here that they don't like, and they want to get to the bottom of it, and they're not going to let Trudeau stonewall it.
Hear, hear.